Matthew 22, starting in verse 34. But when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they gathered together, and one of them, a lawyer, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said to him, Jesus said, you shall love the Lord your God with what? With all your mind and with all your strength. And this is the greatest and first commandment. And a second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend all the law and the prophets. Now that's a very familiar passage to everybody. Probably some memory verses for some of you. I want you to know I've been a Christian now for 25 years. Feel pretty good, quarter-century Christian here. Some of you are like, I got your way beat, pal. Okay, I understand. But almost from the beginning of me becoming a Christian, I was 19 years old in the U.S. Air Force, Northern California. I had this insatiable desire to know who God was. So my mind was my primary function of learning. And I was obsessed with learning about His sovereignty and learning about the Gospels and learning about just the Bible in general and church history and all of those things. I wanted to know who this God is that came to save me. But let me tell you something. What happened was there was a heart-mind disconnect. Anybody been there? I was going to Bible studies. I was attending church. I was doing a lot of things for God with my mind. But my heart, strangely, seemed to be far from Him. Here's what's interesting. In seminary, as a matter of fact, you would think that a lot of the seminarians would be very close to God and would love Him. But there were a lot of seminarians like myself who studied a lot about God, but weren't really knowing who He was here. And that was true for me. I was preoccupied with the mind, and I was missing out on the heart. Now listen, I've been loyal and obedient to God most of my Christian life. Not perfectly, but largely loyal and obedient to Him. I've always belonged to a church. I've always been in Bible study. I went and got my Master's of Divinity degree in a couple seminaries. And even before my degree was over, I had a full-time youth pastor position in a church. I was pretty obedient and loyal to God. But then I realized one day that I was missing out on the greatest thing that Jesus says we could ever do. And that is to love God with all of our hearts and our minds and our souls, everything. He didn't just want my mind, He wanted me. He wanted my heart. And maybe you're similar. You have a similar story too that I have. You're here every time the church doors are open. You're tithing. You are faithful. You go to that Sunday school class. You're on the team. All of that is good, but without a love relationship with Christ, it is all for naught. Do you understand that? What's one of the problems of living in the Bible Belt? Anybody know? Everybody thinks they're a Christian. How long have you been a Christian? I've been a Christian my whole life. I've been going to church my whole life. That wasn't the question. You talk to people about God, and they can say all the right things. Man, can they say all the right things? But their hearts are far from Him. That's a big problem in the Bible Belt. I want you to think for a moment. It's okay to be obedient. But you can be obedient without loving someone, can you not? When was the last time a police officer pulled you over? Were you obedient? Oh yeah, you were. You better be obedient. But were you loving him in that moment? You weren't really loving him all that much. Now listen, this passage is scary. Let me tell you why. Because you can be committed to the Lord and be completely detached from Him with your heart. Completely impersonal. The affectionate level between you and God can be completely severed. And you can can still be faithful. On the outside, what does it look like? Pretty good Christian right there. But on the inside, you are far from God. Now listen, doing the Christian life apart from loving God is no life at all. Doing the right things for God, attending a worship service, helping those in need, studying the Bible, putting your money in the offering plate, singing songs of praise, and on we could go. All that stuff is devoid of true meaning and real significance if your heart is far from Him. But look, don't look at me, look at Jesus. He's the one that said this. He's the one you need to talk to about this. I noticed in my own Christian life, it is far easier to do things for God than cultivate a heart for Him. Maybe that's true for you. I remember in the military, I worked at a General Motors plant in Fort Worth, Texas, as a security guard. Which is kind of a joke because we didn't really have any weapons or had a flashlight. If you're an armed robber, I can definitely show you the light. Shoot the light at you, and then I would be a perfect target for you. But you know what happened at that? Here I'm working on my master's divinity degree, wanting to be a pastor one day, and I'm working as a security guard at a GM plant. So after about the first couple of weeks, it was pretty easy to figure out what to do. There were certain things I had to do each day when I was there at the GM plant. And eventually it just got kind of boring because what was going on? I was there. They hired somebody with a pulse. But that's about it. I was going through the motions. It was so easy. There was no life in it for me. My heart was not in it. Outwardly, I looked like a security guard. Inwardly, I wanted to get out of there. I think that's true for a lot of Christians. A lot of people are so disconnected from their Savior that there's a big, big disconnect. So let me ask you something today. How is your love for God doing? How are you and God doing as far as your relationship? Only you can answer that question. I went with Phil and Terry last Sunday to go see Betty Mac. Hospital. Well, you know, it's funny. I went to the security desk there. I've never been to Memorial before. My wife actually works there sometimes. She's a dietitian. And first of all, the security lady was on her phone doing something terribly important like Facebook. So I was disturbing her. She kind of gave me that look like, what do you want? Just looking to come pray with one of the people in the hospital. I don't know. How about you? Busy. So I said, is Betty Mac? What room is she in? She goes, we don't have a Betty Mac. And I was like, oh no, I got the names mixed up. How about Betty Fuego? How about that? Is that the right names? No, we don't have any Betty Fuego either. I'm like, oh dear, what am I going to do? I know it's not that, it's like 2 stories. It's not that big of a hospital. We can figure this out. So then I was getting ready to call Phil on the phone, and she goes, do you mean Betty McPhail? And I was like, I think that's it. Yes. I will go make that visit to her room. So anyway, we got there. It was kind of funny. We got there, and here's what I noticed. You guys ever seen that chart, the pain chart before? In every room, they have that so you can tell the nurse what's going on. Okay, I think we got it. Yeah, there it is. Check out that chart. I love that chart. As I looked at the chart, I started thinking about our relationship with the Lord. And you like that? There's the pain-free, and then look at the unspeakable, unimaginable. Woo! That's a bad place to be. Level 10. Okay. So that got me thinking about a chart of our love for God. All right, let me read you a couple of them. Things are great. My love for Him has no bounds. Are you there? Things are good. I love the Lord and He loves me. Things are okay. I know God loves me, but we don't spend too much time together. How about this one? Things are not good at all. I'm not sure if God even knows I exist any longer. That's a level 10, is it not?
Yeah.
How are you and God doing? Simple question. Where are you and the Lord in regards to your relationship? Nothing else has ever mattered or will ever matter. That question right there. Nothing else. not your 401k, not climbing the corporate ladder, not your children, not your financial security. Nothing else matters but that question right there. So can I say something to you today? This is from the Lord. Did you know God speaks to you? Speaks to me? This is what he wants to say. God loves you. God loves you. You got to let that sink in. You got to let that resonate with your heart. You got to know it's true. Right, Kai? Now, my kids, you saw my kids come up, I give them a little hug and a kiss. I've always liked kids. I don't know why. I've always liked kids. I knew I would enjoy being a dad, and it's more amazing than I could ever imagine. But if you ask me, do you love your kids, Jeremy? I would say, absolutely. I love my kids with all my heart. I love them dearly. But think about this. I would do anything for my kids, by the way. They are treasures, God. They are gifts from the living Lord to me. They're wonderful. Even when your daughter wakes you up at 4 a.m. Says, I can't find my bunny rabbit. She sleeps with a bunny rabbit. Stumbling through sitting in the bathroom. I still love them, even that. But think about this. As much as I like being a dad, as much as I love my kids, I'm still flawed. I'm still marred. I'm still a sinner. I'm still broken. I'm still very selfish. I'm still thinking about me most of the time. And now imagine when God, who is our Father, says, I love you. A perfect God. God whose love has no bounds. You can't measure his love. That's how much he loves you. You get that? Now I want you to picture. Now you're going to have to use your imagination. Everybody okay with that? Use your imagination. I want you to picture in your mind the son in Luke 15, the prodigal son. Picture in your mind that son. He's on his way home. He's got tears in his eyes. There's pain in his heart. There's shame. He feels dark. Does he not? He feels like a sinner because he is one. He has taken an inheritance early, and he's spent it all on the evils of this world. Wine, women, song. He's thrown it all away. He's been disloyal to his dad, and he's on his way home. And as he's close to home, what happens? There's his dad in the distance. And a father makes his way towards his son. Not casually, but what is he doing? He's running. He's lifting up his cloak, his tunic. He's running to his son. Why? Because love conquers all. He lavishes his love on his son in such a tremendous way that all the pain, all the shame, all the tears, all the brokenness, all the hurt is washed away because of the Father's love. Is that beautiful or what? And that's true for every single child of God. Amen? Amen. Every single one of them. His love lavishes and conquers all. Divine love, if you're a Christian, has come into your life and will never leave. Y'all get that? I got some friends. I've got friends that don't believe in eternal security. I have to smack them around a little bit and tell them to read something called the Bible. Listen, if he has put his seal of love upon your heart, you are sealed until the day of redemption, Ephesians says. Amen. And the promised Holy Spirit. Let me tell you, here's what I'm most scared for my children. Not their security, not money, not evil, not any of that stuff. Here's what I'm most scared for in regards to my children. They're going to grow up a pastor's kid. Which is a little nerve-wracking. You ever had any pastor's kids? Yeah. Some of them are okay, but some of them are pretty wild, aren't they? Now, here's what I'm worried about. What I'm worried about is they're going to go through the motions. And they're going to play the game called, hey, I'm a Christian, everything's okay. But inwardly, their hearts are far from the Lord. That's what I'm worried about. And I want them to understand the most important thing in the words of Christ is their relationship with Christ. And if they get that right, then everything else will primarily work out. They're going to stumble, they're going to trip, they're going to make mistakes. That's okay. But they have to have a heart that is inflamed with Christ, for Christ. And that's my prayer for them. Now, did you also notice in this passage that Jesus didn't just talk about loving God? What else does he talk about? Loving your neighbor. They're right there together. You can't separate the two. Do you understand this? Now, when I read these words, I'm floored. You know why? Because he says to love your neighbor a certain way. How are you supposed to love them? Help them out every now and then? Give them a buck if they need it? Mow their lawn if they're kind of ill? Not feeling well? What does he say? Love them how? As yourself. Seriously? Christ. Do you know what you're talking about? Yes, I do. What does he mean? This is incredible. As I love myself. Listen, you don't love anybody better than you love yourself. Do you know that? Now listen to me. Living for yourself, it's fun, it's easy, it's a default reaction of the heart. But it is a shallow, hollow, death spiral of a life. If all your life is wrapped up with is you, it is not a life worth living. You ever been around people like that? Not a lot of fun to be around for very long, is it? Everything's about them. Oh, hey, thanks for filling me in on you. Let me talk about me. Okay, go ahead. I've got to get to my next appointment. Jesus says that life should be centered around two things. Loving God and loving your neighbor. I love 1 John 4:20. Let me read it to you. If anyone says, I love God and hates his brother whom he has seen, cannot love God whom he has not seen. In this commandment we have from him, whoever loves God must love his brother. You see how closely tied these are together? Now, why is that true? I don't ask many questions in sermons. This isn't rhetorical. Why is that true? What I just read. What's your brother made in? What's your brother made in? The image of God. And what John is saying is, you can't even love the image of God. If you can't love his image, you can't love him. Y'all see it? You see the connection there? Spiritual leaders in Jesus' day, man, they looked good. They were religious. On the outside, buddy, they were dutiful. They were obedient. That letter of the law, man, they were all over it, were they not? But Jesus saw through their charade, did he not? Amen. He saw through the mask. And he saw their hearts were what? Hard. They talked about loving God, but did they really love God in their hearts? They were far from God. But you know who Jesus hung out with a lot? Sinners, lepers, tax collectors, evil, vile people of the day, sinners that knew they were sinners. Jesus hung out with prostitutes. Do you get that? I remember in Thailand, helping with the tsunami relief back in 2004. We had got done early with the project one day. We pulled over this little beach area. We're swimming in the beach, having a good time, and I said, hey, I gotta run up to use the restrooms. So I go up to the restroom, use the restroom, and I'm standing there, and I ask for a drink. It's a little bar thing set up there. I said, can I have a drink? Coke or not Coke or whatever they had. And I'm talking to the lady, and she eventually points out to me that there's a table of girls behind the deal over there. I go and I look, and there's some girls over there. And she basically propositions me. You can have one of these girls. Which is an industry in Thailand. Y'all understand that? And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, that was back when WWJD was a big deal. What would Jesus do? You know, they're on a mission trip, all that kind of stuff. I mean, my friends are swimming 20 feet away. I'm not going to do anything. But I thought, you know, what would Jesus do? You know what I think he would do? I think he would say, I'll take one girl for the day, I think he would take that girl and he would walk with her, talk with her about her life, minister to her. He would take her to a local congregation of believers, and he would get her connected to the right people, to some women in that church who could minister, to love, and take care of her. Would he not? I think he would. That's loving your neighbor. I didn't do that, I'm ashamed to say. Do you know Jesus asked the question, who's your neighbor? You guys remember that? Luke chapter 10. And what does he do? He tells a story of the good Samaritan. You know why he has to tell that story? Because the religious leaders of the day wouldn't go near a Samaritan. They were half-breeds. They wouldn't go near them. And he had to help people understand it doesn't matter what race someone is. It doesn't matter their gender, the socioeconomic status. None of that matters to God. What matters to God is that an image, His very image, is right there in your path, and they need help. What are you going to do? That's what matters to God. Jesus was not angry very much, I don't think, but He was angry at the religious elite of His day. Was He not? So what does this look like? Loving your neighbor. Can I bring up a church historical figure, John Wesley? You guys remember John Wesley? So many stories. The Wesleys, the Holy Club at Oxford, that whole group, fantastic. I'll tell some more of those stories at another point. But let me point out one thing with John, and he was not perfect by any stretch. Okay, we often lift these figures up a little higher than they need to be. John Wesley, he grew up in grinding poverty. It was really bad. He actually saw his father struggle time and again and was sent to a debtor's prison. That's how bad things were for the Wesley family. But John was on a different path. John became a pastor, became a professor at Oxford. He had money. He was doing okay. And he would spend his money on whatever he wanted. And one day he was putting up pictures that he just bought in a room in his house. They knock on the door, chambermaid came in, and it struck him. She had on this real thin sweater, and it was really cold outside. And he knew that's all she could afford. So he put his hand in his pocket to give her some money to go buy a coat, and when he did, all he had was a couple of coins. He didn't have enough to give her, to help her out. And he said, at that moment, I tossed and turned that very night, and I realized I had been wasting so much money when I could be helping others. A tangible expression of love. Now think about this. This is in the 1700s. 30 pounds, Betty Mackey attested this, was what he could live on for the year back then. About $20,000. He could live on that. And he made a determination, anything above that I'm going to give away. Okay? At the height of his career, Methodism is going through the roof. 1 out of 3 Englishmen was a Methodist. I mean, he was in charge of a lot of different societies, and he ran a newspaper. I mean, he did all kinds of stuff. He was a huge monumental figure in Christian history. At the height, he was making 1,400 pounds a year. 1,400 pounds a year, which works out to $160,000 in 1 year, with all the royalties that came in. And guess what he did? He lived on 30 pounds and he gave the rest away. Pretty amazing. Pretty great example. And here's what's really interesting. When he died, they only found a few coins in his coat. He'd given it all away to help the poor and those in need. I love that example of Wesley. Let me ask you something. Is your time, energy, talents, money, and all being seen through the lens of eternity? Let me just say something. When you stand before the Lord one day, there's going to be a couple things that are going to come up. One, your entire life. So don't get too worried or scared. Your whole life's going to come up before the Lord. And He's going to say, what have you done for me that had eternal significance? And what was wasted? What was wasted? It's kind of scary. Your soul's not being judged, but your works will be judged. Now listen, this is why Bells, I think, is so good. Because what Bells does is, it helps give you a tangible way to go love your neighbor. It's an expression of your love for God. Loving your neighbor. If you love God, then loving your neighbor is what? Just a normal thing. It's not a big deal. My love for the Lord will be expressed through my love of others. And Bells is a great way to begin to do that. And listen, don't get inundated by all 5 of these. Just take one. Just take blessing. You know what I did this week? Somebody did this to me about 2 or 3 months ago. I was at Wawa. Did y'all know I like Wawa? Love that place. I'm joking. Okay. So I'm hanging out at Wawa, my second home. And I go up to the lady with my coffee, and she says, "Your coffee's been paid for." I was like, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Someone before you came through the line. They didn't know who I was. They just said, I'm going to pay for a coffee." I was like, "Sweet." And I'm thinking about it selfishly. Yeah, it's great. Got a free coffee. Woo! But then this week I was there, and I was thinking about blessing. And I was thinking, Lord, how can I bless? What are some tangible ways I can bless? And I said, what's the number one coffee that people buy when they come here? She said, large coffee. I said, bring me up for a large coffee. Next person that comes through will get it for free. Just a small little way to be a blessing in our world. Amen? When it came to the eating portion, try to eat with people this week. That's a little harder, is it not? Kind of hard to eat with people. I was praying. I was like, Lord, I don't know. Who am I going to pray? Text message from an old pastor that I saw at Seminole Heights when we did the training for the association. He'd come up to me and we were talking, and he said, "Hey, let's get together for lunch." He texted me as I was thinking about who I was going to eat with. "Can you eat tomorrow?" "Sure, let's go eat." And he paid for it too. That was nice. I offered. He said, "No, I want to." Here's what you do when you're eating. What are you doing when you're eating? Staring at each other? Who can eat the fastest? No. What are you doing? You're having a conversation. He's sharing his heart. I'm sharing mine. We're having a great conversation. We're talking about life. That's what happens when you eat with people. But look, here's the I word that this whole thing has to come together with: intentionality. If you're not intentional about God, who do you want me to bless this week, and you're not praying that prayer, you're probably not going to end up blessing anybody that week. Can your time get filled in pretty quickly? Anybody? Real little kids? Whoa, where'd all my time go? Golly, we had to have 3 kids. Now all my time's gone. 1 a little bit, you kind of got a little leeway. 2, uh-oh. We got on the life jacket. My time is quickly leaving. 3, forget it. It's gone. Just forget it. So we have to be intentional, do we not? We have to think, Lord, who do you want me to bless? Who do you want me to eat with? And I was talking to Carmel. I'm sorry, I brought you up twice in 2 weeks in the sermon. I was talking to her this morning, and she says something that she's doing is she's adding the name of Jesus in just normal conversations during her week. Imagine what kind of blessing that is to people that may be far from Him. They may need to hear a word from Him. Amen? Okay? Now listen, I'm going to show you a quick little video. This video encapsulates what I've been trying to say. The church does a great job of gathering together, but we do a really bad job of going out and doing what? Being sent ones, being missionaries for the Lord. So watch this video, and then I'm going to pray. We'll go into the time of invitation. Amen? You get it?
Amen.
The church has always been called to go to be sent into the world. It's always been called to do that. And so we here at Wellswood have got to take up the charge of what that actually looks like. What does it look like for just normal, everyday Christians to go into their world, to be blessings, to eat, to listen to the Spirit, to look at the Gospels and watch Jesus do what He does. It's incredible. To emulate Him, to learn from Him. And always remember the S. Always remember you're sent by God into this world. So as we close with the time of invitation, I want you to think about this. Where are you in your love relationship with the Lord? First and foremost, that is the most important question you could ever ask. 2, what does it look like for you to love your neighbor? What does Mel's look like for you? Will you take up the challenge? And will you find a way, it's not the way, but it's a way, a tangible way to be what God has called you to be, to love your neighbor as yourself. Pretty remarkable statement. Okay? So I'll be up here to pray with you if you want to come up and talk about that, whether it's a relationship with the Lord or